So, like I was saying, this is mostly going to focus on the transfer process, what to expect as you transfer to CCS. If you've already applied, this is going to be very useful information. If you have not applied yet, it's also going to be useful information. But just as a quick reminder, we do have plenty of programs that are, I think many of you have already mentioned that you're interested in. So we have communication design, entertainment arts, fashion design, fashion business management, which is a new program that's actually a BA program. So it is a little bit different. So we're not going to focus on transferring into that program today. But if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer them later. Film, illustration, interdisciplinary art and design. We're going to touch on interdis, and I am sorry, I'm fighting off a bit of a cold or something today. We're going to touch on interdisciplinary art and design because it happens to be our most transfer-friendly program, and you can actually study a lot of our programs within that major. Interior design, photography, product design, studio arts and crafts, that's kind of like our fine arts program. It encompasses a lot of stuff. Transportation design, art education, and we do have plenty of minors, including and also a teacher certificate program. So that is a program that is a little bit different than our other programs. It can be tacked on to any of these majors, and it does require an additional semester to graduate with your teaching certificate. But it's a really wonderful program. If you have any questions about that, I'm also happy to answer them. I will say the trade-off with that program is that you do lose some of your transferable credits. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'm happy to get into that with a little bit more detail. And then we do have minors, and quite a few minors, that a lot of our transfer students are usually at an advantage towards taking because you have so many electives coming in often that it opens up space for our students to actually take a minor. So if you're interested in doing like product design with a side of illustration, like that's something you can totally do. So there's a lot of opportunities for transfer students specifically at our institution. So one reason that I really hope you all consider CCS is that there is just such a dedication to our career development. So the question I get most often from transfer students is like, what am I going to do after I graduate, right? We bring in plenty of companies to meet with our students. We have internship connections through our career development office. And we have something called sponsored projects. So sponsored projects are actually where we bring in companies like Nickelodeon, BMW, GMC. We've had so many, Carhartt, come in to actually design or work with our students collaboratively to work on assignments that are really close to what you would experience working in those industries. So it really sets you up nicely for after you graduate. And we actually have a wonderful placement after you graduate from CCS, usually about an 86% placement in your field of study, full-time career within 6 months of graduation. That is really due to these sponsored projects in the Career Development Office specifically, as well as the education you get at CCS. So if you're worried about having an art and design degree, I know I was, you are in very good hands here. We definitely have our finger on the pulse of the creative sector, and there are plenty of jobs in the creative sector. CCS specifically is really great with transfer students too. So we're very transfer friendly. We have been a Phi Theta Kappa school, like honor roll school, which means we're thought of as like a program that is very, very in tune with like transfer students and is very dedicated to bringing transfer students into our program. And we've made that honor roll for 7 years in a row. So that's pretty incredible. We are the only art and design school with that distinction. And we're also the only Michigan college with that distinction. So kind of a double whammy there. About 1 in 4 of our students are transfer students, which is fantastic. I was a transfer student myself. I actually went to a different art school, but very similar to CCS in a lot of ways. And I was one of 5 transfer students that year. And I think that year they brought in about 120 students overall. So and I think the school itself was like a little bit over 500 students. So I didn't know anybody for a long time. It was really hard to get like assimilated into that school. And it took me about a semester before I actually kind of felt like I had some friends and I knew some people. Um, We're also really generous with scholarships. Like, we give out wonderful scholarships. There are also like stacking scholarships that you can get, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And we are very military friendly as well. So if you have any sort of military benefits, you can apply them to CCS. Also, sometimes your military courses can be transferred into CCS. A few of those classes can come in as open electives and sometimes even electives. Okay, so this is where we get into a lot of detail. I'll give you a second to maybe like grab a pen or pull out your notes app on your phone. Also, like we said, this will be recorded. So if you want to reach out to me after this is over, I can also send you the recording. But do try to like write it down because that helps you remember things. Take a sip here so I don't lose my voice. All right, so I think it's really helpful to think of transferring in terms of phases or steps. And it is really important to remember that transferring to CCS is a longer process than a typical transfer to like a university, or if you're transferring to another community college, or if you've only gone from like high school to community college. It takes a little bit longer to get everything sort of like situated for your time at CCS. So just be aware of that and don't just disappear. Don't worry. Like if it's taking a couple of months, like that's pretty normal for all that to kind of happen. So yeah, so we'll kind of take it step by step here. So the first step, and I think this is really helpful either before you've applied or even after, like shortly after you've applied, is to schedule a one-on-one virtual appointment with me or another counselor. I am probably going to be the best option when it comes to scheduling an appointment, but Olivia, our other counselors, will be happy to meet with you as well. But what happens in those appointments is I really open up time to go through your transfer credits, to look at your portfolio if you're ready to like show it to me. And it doesn't have to be the portfolio that's ready for admissions, right? It could just be some work that you're thinking about including in the portfolio. And I can go over like maybe some classes that you can take in the next semester. Maybe like what to include in your portfolio that would best suit the department that you're applying for. So this is something that you can do even if you're thinking about applying like in a year. It's really good to, really take the initiative and meet with us to really figure out kind of like where you stand as a transfer student. And that is because every transfer student is very, very different. So I know like I went to multiple colleges before I decided to transfer to an art and design school. So I had about 3 transcripts that I had to like get and like have evaluated. And that's very different than a student who has stayed at one school for a couple of years. So it's, like I said, really important to reach out to me and get an appointment with me. And that is my Calendly link right there. I'll also give it at the end of the presentation so you have some time to take a picture of it. So the first step to transferring is very similar to, just applying basically. So you can fill out the free online application. It takes about 30 minutes to complete the application. It's not like a tricky application at all. There's not an artist statement required. You don't have to fill out an essay. It's really just getting down your information, but you do want to be very specific with what you put in there. You want to make sure you list all the colleges you've attended, all the high schools that you went to, so that we know kind of what to look for in your application. The next steps would be to submit your college transcripts. And it's very important to keep this in mind. We need a college transcript from every college you've attended. So if you were at MCC for a little bit and OCC for a little bit, you're going to have to submit 2 transcripts because we're not necessarily going to be able to see all of those credits on just one of your transcripts. Sometimes we can get a rough idea of like maybe what you've taken at another college, but they may not list like the grades and the all that information that we need to actually give you transfer credit when we get to actually evaluating your credit for transfer credit. So you can send unofficial transcripts if you want to. That's a good way to save money before making a decision to attend CCS. Just keep in mind that before you attend CCS, you actually do have to submit your official transcripts. If you do submit unofficial transcripts, just make sure that your name, your school's name, your GPA, all the grades from each course and the course codes are listed on the transcript. So sometimes that can be a screenshot from your student portal, but sometimes it might need to be like an actual like transcript document that they will give to students. So you can sometimes get your transcript basically on your student portal. If you are submitting official transcripts, just make sure to do it through either Student Clearinghouse or Parchment. Those are usually the two that will offer that service. But some schools are a little bit different. There are some schools that still like to do it their own way. So if you can't find it on there, it's good to just Google like the name of your school plus request transcripts to figure out what that is. And just keep in mind, AI tools, the summary tools, when you do a Google search now, are sometimes incorrect. So you may actually need to go to the school's website to figure out what the correct information is. All right, the next step is submitting your portfolio. Now, I do want to say like something that is new to the school, if you have looked into CCS in the previous years, is that for film, interior design, and photography, we don't require a portfolio for admissions or scholarships if you have a 2.5 cumulative GPA overall. If you have lower than a 2.5, we will require a portfolio. However, the big catch to all of this is that if you've taken any sort of college level courses in art and design, you're probably still going to need to submit a portfolio eventually. So we use your portfolio, especially works from the classes that you've taken in college, to determine if we can give you transfer credit for those courses. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in the pretty soon. So just keep that in mind. While it's not required for admissions, it is going to be required if you want to receive transfer credit from those classes. Now, this doesn't impact your like liberal arts courses or sciences or anything like that. So if you haven't taken any art and design courses and you're applying to these programs, don't worry about it. But yeah, for those of you in that situation, we do need to see some work eventually. All right. For all other degrees, I like to think of this as kind of like a showing of like not only your best work, but also work that you have done in your classes. Because like I was mentioning for the previous degrees, we do need to see work from those classes to know if we can give you transfer credit for those courses. So it's best practice, can't talk, to submit about 2 to 3 examples of work from each college level course that you've completed or in the process of taking from the colleges you've attended. Now, that being said, if you've been in college for a while, if you've gone to multiple colleges, if you've taken a few years off, sometimes you may not have examples from like those early classes, and that is okay. For example, if you're in typography 3 and you've taken and you've lost your work from typography 1 or 2, often we can see like the sort of evolution of those courses in typography 3. So, you know, if you don't have examples all the time, don't worry about it too much. Just do your best job at getting about 2 to 3 examples of work from those courses. And we recommend that you know, use Google Drive to maybe like organize that. And I'll kind of show you a little bit about that more here in just a second. But even now, like if you're in courses right now and you're thinking about applying for the fall, start to collect that work because you don't want that sneaking up on you at the last minute when you're actually submitting these transcript or the portfolio. So for the portfolio through SlideRoom, we can accept about 5 to 12 examples of your best work. Now 5 is the minimum, 12 is the maximum, and there is space in the SlideRoom application to also like let us know like what the project was, which class it was from, what the medium was, that sort of thing. However, if you have taken a lot of courses and you're going to need more than just those 12 maximum spaces for submitting your work, you can instead submit it through a Google Drive folder. Like I said, though, you'll want to be super organized. You'll want to give us sharing permission, and I'll get into that in just a minute. Now, for tips and tricks as far as like submitting your portfolio, You want to take like lots of photographs of your work. You want to make sure it's in very good lighting. You might like take multiple images and then go through your phone and like heart the ones that are like the best examples of that. Um, and then start to organize from there. Like that's a very good way to kind of like, sort through your work, start to just determine like what the best pieces are. And then you can start to organize from there. And I always like to say, like, you don't need to do like a professional like portfolio. Like you don't need to get like a really expensive camera involved. As long as you're using your phone in good lighting and taking detailed notes and everything, you should be in really good shape for submitting that portfolio. Um, so our transfer, the head of our transfer organization, this is work from her son when he was a kid. But this is a really good example of how to clean up your work. So we don't want to see, your work spread out on a table, kind of like stacked on top of one another. We want to make sure we can see that really well. So make sure that you're cropping it, make sure that there's not like a dog or like your foot in the background or a messy a messy like surface. Like we want to just focus on your work entirely. So make sure you're cropping it out. If you're doing like fashion design, this is something that happens a lot. Like you'll see like the messy studio and all that, and sometimes like it's kind of hard to know like what the piece is. So you want to make it really easy on us so that we can really really like focus in on like the best areas of your work and we're not distracted by anything else. All right. So if you're making physical work and you're having a hard time photographing it, you can actually use natural lighting. So on a cloudy, kind of sort of overcast day, that's a really great time to actually like take your work outside and get a really excellent photograph of it. That way you don't have to deal with lighting, you don't have to deal with like glares from like readjusting like the lights or anything like that. The only thing you really want to look out for is that like iPhone shadow when you're taking the photograph. So make sure that that shadow is not in there. The painting in the bottom there, that's actually a painting by Lois Dodd, who's a famous artist. She's actually painting her shadow. So if you're painting your shadow, that's okay. But don't make sure not to have your own shadow in the image. All right, so keep it pretty simple. You want to show your best works. I've just used cats here as an example, so I'm not showing any like actual students' portfolios. But go through the works and determine which ones are the best ones. Trust your gut. Sometimes, like if you really feel like a piece is just not the best example of your work, like maybe that's one you leave out. But you could also ask like the any peers in your class that you trust. You could ask your teacher. You could also ask us. So like this is when you might want to book an appointment with me or another counselor to like go through a lot of examples of your work to help determine like which ones we think are the best for the portfolio. Yeah. All right. So I kind of already mentioned this, but don't skimp on the details here. Make sure that you are letting us know what you did, especially if it's a collaborative project. So sometimes if you're working in film, or like even like graphic design work, sometimes it's a collaborative project. If it is a collaborative project, totally cool to include that, but let us know like what specifically you did. So if you're shooting like a fashion piece, like let us know if you're the photographer or if you're the fashion designer. Sometimes we get a little bit confused when we look at that work, so you want to put as much detail in there as possible. And if you're doing like a master study or anything like that, totally cool, but just make sure that you're letting us know that that's a master study. And we're all inspired by other artists. Totally cool to be inspired by other artists like Van Gogh. Obviously, some of his most famous work was inspired by Japanese prints. But he was really taking it to like he was taking that inspiration and like making totally new work from that. So if you're inspired by other artists, like totally great, but make sure that you're putting your own spin on it. And we always say try to stay away from fan art. We want to see like your own characters, your own stories, your own worlds. So this is especially true like if you're doing animation, if you're doing illustration, we see a lot of fan art. And it's always best to show your own original work, unless it's like the most like beautiful one man punch art I've ever seen in my life. You want to make sure it's yours. And a really great example of this is there's this comic book from a few years ago where all these different artists came together to redo Akira, the manga Akira through The Simpsons. So it's called Bart Kira. It's really silly, but obviously while they're referencing Akira here and they're referencing The Simpsons here, this is like totally their own work, right? Like it's completely theirs. So if you're referencing something, totally fine. But yeah, those are kind of the guidelines. We don't just want to see a picture of Spider-Man. We want to see your own spin on it. All right, so AI. AI is like obviously, everyone's talking about AI right now. And we do allow some AI informed images. So our policy is that the use of AI can be used for like the process and research, but not the final image. Okay. So we don't want to see like AI work that has, you're using like artist names as prompts. Really what you want to use AI for is for like, as a tool, not as like the final piece. But if you do use AI in a piece, we allow one AI work. It does have to be like very creative. It has to be your own unique thing. Hopefully you're, making changes to it. Maybe you're just using it as a background fill. Maybe you're using it as just like a very interesting collage piece that you're working with other. You're putting in other things with it. But we do want to make sure that you let us know that it's AI, okay? And you are allowed one of those in your portfolio, so no more than one. So our policy on AI is basically like it's going to be a tool. It's probably going to be like the new Photoshop in a lot of ways, but we want to make sure that our own artist hand is involved in that. Okay, so switch gears, going to earning transfer credits. All right, so we can transfer up to 66 credits for most majors. For some majors, we can do a little bit more. Typically, they max out around 72, but 66 is a safe bet. We only consider classes that are a C or higher. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. So if you have a C minus, we will not consider that for transfer credit, that specific class. Um, for your studio arts and crafts courses, so those are like your design courses, your art courses. Like I said, we got to see work from those classes in order to give you credit for those courses, unless, like I mentioned before, it's like a more introductory level class and you're showing all of your illustration skills from your digital illustration course. Like we see your drawing experience from your first drawing class that you no longer have examples of. That's okay. We do consider the MTA, associate's degrees, AP, IB, CLEP. We also look at other things like credit for prior learning. If you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to me. It's kind of a longer winded thing, so I won't get into it today. And if you have an associate's degree specifically in art and design, we do offer a 2+2 sort of guarantee through our interdisciplinary art and design program. Now, through Interdis, you are able to study a variety of majors, and I'll talk about that a bit later. But for other programs, we do really have to look at everything class by class. It's a little bit hard with the structure of our curriculum to guarantee that you'll get all of your credits for a program like communication design or a program like interior design, for example. And that is because our curriculum is a little bit different from like a university's curriculum. So we're really kind of looking for different things. And the reason for that is that we mostly offer BFAs. So we do have one BA program, which is that fashion business management BA, but all of the other degrees we offer are BFAs. And BFAs typically have far more studio art and design courses required to graduate. So in the 121 credits at CCS, about 2/3 of those courses are spent in your studio art and design courses or your art and design classes. And that's what makes it a bachelor's of fine arts instead of just a bachelor's of arts. So most associate's degrees are sort of built with a BA requirement in mind. So this can make things a little bit different. Like I was mentioning, every transfer student, your experience is going to be different from the next transfer student. So once again, that is where you would get in touch with me to kind of figure out like where your credits are falling in that sort of whole shuffle. So this is an example of our degree structure. This is our game art degree structure. But as you can see, we take about 15 credits per semester. And as you see right here, like about 4 to 3 of those courses each semester are spent in those game design classes or other fine art courses. So that is where it can be a little bit tricky when it comes to transferring to CCS. So these are the most like universally applied transfer credits. So the sort of purple arrows there, those are usually like foundational courses that you take at a community college. Often you can expect to get transfer credit from those courses, provided it's a C or higher and your work is looking good. And then those gray arrows, those are for your liberal arts courses. So if you've done an associate's degree and let's say like you have no advanced credit, you're still probably going to get somewhere in the ballpark of 40 credits coming into this program, but they're spread out over the 4 years. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't graduate a little bit faster. Often students are able still to graduate a bit faster than the 4 years. So your transfer credits are, definitely not going to waste at all. But when you see your transfer credit evaluation, that is how they're kind of spread out over your time at CCS. Now, I've been mentioning interdis. Interdisciplinary is the program where we are most flexible with transfer credit. So as you can see back here, there are very specific classes required. For example, Game Art 1 in your second year, Game Art Projects 2 in your sixth semester down there. So sometimes those courses, like you're just not going to have those available at the community college level. And that can kind of slow you down when it comes to graduating in 2 years. But through interdis, we have all of these undergraduate student studio electives that are open. So any sort of art and design class that you've taken can fulfill those requirements. So what that means is that, if you decide like, okay, I really want to graduate in 2 years, I have an associate's degree in art and design, but like I've applied to, whatever program at CCS and I see I'm going to end up spending 3 years here. I really need to graduate in 2 years. We can take all of the credit that you have and we can apply them towards those studio electives. And then you can spend the rest of the time, all those like undergraduate studio electives that I've highlighted, any sort of space that is left, you can spend putting towards the major that you really want to go into. So if that's game design, like what we do is we work with a faculty advisor at interdisciplinary and in game design to come up with like a curriculum that would be best for you with the time you have left. So it is not just this degree where you're doing whatever you want to every semester. You are working with an advisor. We do have your career goals in mind, and we're working with you each semester to make sure those career goals are up to date and that you're evolving in the program in a good way. It's also a degree where if you're really interested in blending degrees, you can do that too. So if you really want to do fashion and product design together, this is a really perfect degree for that. So I won't get into much more detail than that, but just know that I always recommend applying to the major that you really want to go into. And then if you feel like, man, this is just going to take too long, we can talk about like switching you over to interdisciplinary art and design. It's a pretty easy process. So put all of your energy into going into the major that you really want to go into. And then if worse comes to worse, we can, and this isn't a bad program at all. It's a really great program actually. So I don't want to make it sound like it's a bad program. But we can switch you over there and we can come up with a really good degree plan for you. All right, does all that make sense so far? Are there any questions so far, Olivia?
No questions yet.
Okay, I know I'm going through a lot of stuff. So for those of you whose classes I was in this week or last week, I said this was going to get more detailed. All right. So timing is really important when it comes to transferring. So I know a lot of transfer students, the most of you apply a little bit later in the year because you're so busy in your classes, you're so busy like, maybe working a part-time job while you're, doing your classes. So it's totally understandable if like you apply a bit later than the deadlines. But it is best practice to apply by November 1st for the winter or spring semester and March 15th for the fall semester. Now, there are earlier deadlines that are really more for the incoming freshman class. But if you're ready to go at that point, fantastic. Like go ahead and apply by those deadlines, by the January 1st or December 1st deadline. That gives you a lot of time to make a decision. However, if you're coming in at that March 15th or that November 1st deadline, you're still going to have time. to really take your time to like review like your financial aid options, your scholarships, to review like what kind of transfer credits are coming in, and to meet with your academic advisors at CCS, or even find housing if you're going to live on campus. So just make sure, like, try to hit that deadline if you can, because it's going to be going to give you the most time to really make that decision. And like I was mentioning up top, the transfer process does take a little bit longer than some other schools. All right, affording CCS. Okay, so a lot of students do get a little scared about the price of the school. However, like I was mentioning, we do stack plenty of scholarships and plenty of aid together. So it ends up being a lot less expensive than you think it's going to be. And in fact, a lot of students are paying about the same that they would pay at a state school to come to CCS. But I just want to make you aware of the whole process so you don't get scared and just ghost us in the middle of the whole financial aid process. So the first thing to do after you've applied is to submit your FAFSA. And this is something like, depending on what age you are, you may still have to work with your parents on this. If you have any detailed questions about that, if you're like, estranged from your parents or something like that, you can work with financial aid to get those questions answered. And usually there's some pretty good workarounds there. The FAFSA is available now. You can submit it. Our code is 006671. If you don't remember that or didn't write it down, it's very easy to find, but just know that like if you've already submitted a FAFSA, you can just go into your FAFSA and add CCS as a potential school. It doesn't like commit you to our school. It doesn't like redirect your aid from a different school to CCS until you're actually a student at CCS. So it's just basically allowing us to view that information so that we can get you as much financial aid as possible. And so the first scholarship that you'll likely receive is if you are accepted to the school, you'll get a merit scholarship. And that is based on your GPA and portfolio for the programs that do look at portfolios. And our high scholarships are very, very helpful. So they can range from about 25,000 to 28K a year. They can be a little bit lower depending on if your GPA is a little bit lower, but don't freak out if that's the case. We can still help you out. The next thing we look at is your federal aid. So you can expect to get Pell Grants if you're getting Pell Grants at your school currently, as long as like your finances haven't changed too much. We also offer through the federal aid low interest student loans, as well as other grants that you might be eligible for through either the federal government or through Michigan specifically. Then we stack on other scholarships on top of that. So if you're a PTK member or have the opportunity to join PTK, you're going to get an additional 1K scholarship per year. So yeah, if PTK has reached out to you and has let you know that you're eligible, I think it's totally worth it to join PTK. You can also appeal your scholarship. So this is where, like, if your scholarship's a bit low, if there's a big gap in between, like, your federal aid and your merit scholarship, and you really need help to come to CCS, reach out to us and we'll walk you through the appeal process. I would say most transfer students do end up appealing the scholarships, and that's totally fine. We realize that a lot of you don't have your students or your parents forking over lots of money for you to attend the college. And then there are outside scholarships available too that you can apply for. And there's a huge list on our website under financial aid that I really encourage you to go through and see if you qualify for any of them, even if they're like lower scholarships, like if they're 2,000 a year or 1,000 a year, that's still super helpful. And all of that money stacking up, you'd be surprised how much it helps you afford the school at CCS. All right, so you go through all that, you go through that whole financial aid process, and if you're still worried about affording the school, reach out to us. The chances are we can probably still help you. If you're worried about credits that didn't transfer over, absolutely reach out to me. I can explain to you why they might have not transferred over, or sometimes it happens, we just miss something. So it's very possible that maybe we just didn't see a transcript that came in later or something like that, and you are going to get like 12 more credits. So like I said up top, be your best advocate, be the squeaky wheel, like reach out to us as much as you can. We are here to help you. And that is my Calendly link there too. So once again, I'll show it a bit later. Okay, we're almost done, I swear. Okay. So the next step then is typically you'll get a transfer credit evaluation. And I kind of already showed you the curriculum charts. But the transfer credit evaluation, or TCE is what we call it, is really showing you like where everything is transferring in. It's showing you which classes are transferring in. And most importantly, it's alerting you to maybe things that you still need to take care of before we can give you credit for those courses. And if you forget any of this, like it is listed on the TCE, so you can absolutely review these notes if you have any questions, but I'm still going to walk you through it just in case, okay? So once again, I'm using my cat as an example here. Frankie the cat went to Cat Community College, and we have that Cat Community College transcript, but we noticed in their transcripts that they have AP credit, and we don't have that AP transcript, so we can't award any credits from AP yet, right? So the transcript's missing, that's something to pay attention to when we go through this. So as you can see here in the bottom here, the courses from Cat Community College that did come in, you got Composition 2, you got a Humanities course, you got a History course, it looks like, you got a Film course coming in, but the AP courses, that English 1 and Bio 1 course, we don't have the grades on, or the scores on, so we don't know if we can give that to you just yet, excuse me. Sorry about that. Very unpleasant audio. So that is why it's highlighted in red. And the code here says meaning that we need your unofficial or we only have your unofficial transcript, and we need that official transcript before we can actually turn that red credit into black credit and actually give you credit for that course. So if you do find yourself in that situation, like AP courses, very easy to submit your AP grades, scores from the College Board. Just go on over to the College Board and submit your AP transcript, and we can get that remedied for you very quickly. All right, moving on down, some other things to worry about here, to look for. Sometimes you'll see IP, which means in progress. And that just means that's a class that you're currently enrolled in. And we hope that you get a C or higher, but we can't give you credit until that final grade is released. So that means you need to submit your final official transcripts once the semester has concluded and once we have those final grades. And once we get that, we can move that over to credit awarded. Now, the big one to watch out for is the NW, and the NW stands for need work. So that means we need to see some work from that class before we can assess it for transfer credit. So once again, we do have a handy dandy list here for you to go through to see like what does NW actually mean? What do I need to submit? And it's all listed for you here. So if you do get in that situation, you are like, I can't remember what that guy was saying, you can always read this form and you'll see what exactly it is we're looking for. So I had talked about this, but in this situation, this is where that Google Drive folder really comes in handy. So I was saying like, hey, maybe need to keep examples of your work from all those classes that you've taken. Well, this is where, like, if you planned ahead, you can be like, okay, I do have that work there. I can just go ahead and share it with us and make sure that I get assessed for that transfer credit. So you want to look really closely at that transfer credit evaluation form. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. So once you get it, like look through it, make sure like you sit down on a couch, like make sure nobody's interrupting you, and just go through it line by line to make sure that there is nothing there that is outstanding and that we need from you. All right, so you made it through all those steps. The next step then would be to place your tuition deposit and start registering for courses. And this is when you'll be assigned an academic advisor. Unfortunately, because of the size of our school, because of all the amount of students that our academic advisors have to deal with, we do not really have students meet with academic advisors before they deposit. So, make sure you're reaching out to me if you have any questions, if you have any concerns. Don't feel like you just have to place your deposit as soon as you get your award letter, although it's totally fine if you do, but that deposit is non-refundable. So you want to make sure that everything is looking good maybe before you place that $250 deposit, or you might risk losing that deposit if it turns out that it wasn't what you expected. So if you have any questions about your schedule, anything like that, I will do my best to answer those questions for you before you deposit. But once you've gone through all that, your academic advisor is going to help you with your graduation timeline, your class schedule. If you have a part-time job or something, they're going to do their best to like work with you on that. Now, in some cases, like there might be some classes that you really have to take at a certain time, and there's no way around it. But they're still going to do their best to like work for you and try to make everything work. And you're going to meet with them pretty much every semester. You can also ask them about minors, like I said up top. Like a lot of transfer students have a lot of those electives coming in, and that is often like that opens up space for you to do a minor. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely talk about it with your academic advisor, and they can start planning that out for you. All right, so pretty much wrapping up here, but just some additional resources that I think are super helpful. There is a CCS Majors Insight playlist on the CCS Admissions YouTube page, not the CCS YouTube page. It's a different YouTube page. So if you need to screenshot this, go for it. But there are lectures from each one of our department heads on what is going on in their program. And it gives you really, really excellent up-to-date information on what to expect in those programs. Like what kind of classes are you going to be doing? What kind of assignments are you going to be doing? What are the most recent alumni doing after they've graduated? Because often the faculty have the most up-to-date information that we sometimes in admissions don't always have. So they can give you a ton of insight that you wouldn't see otherwise. And it's really like great to see this also because it gives you a rough idea of like what your work is going to look like in a couple of years. Because like, when you come into CCS, like I often hear from students, like they're a little bit scared. They're like, oh man, the work looks so professional. Like I don't, am I going to be able to keep up with these classes? Am I, going to be, am I just going to be totally lost in these classes? And the thing is, like, when you dedicate all that time to just working in your studio, to, working with your peers, to having that teacher to student connection, it's going to really develop your work very, very quickly. So I like to say, like, don't be scared of like the work that you see coming out of our juniors and coming out of our seniors. It's actually like very plausible that, just with a few semesters at CCS, like your work is going to look incredible. So, keep that up, don't be scared of it. And yeah, use this as a tool. Also, it's a good way, like if you're thinking about like, I don't know if I want to go into communication design or if I want to go into product design, it's a good way to kind of see the differences in those programs too. So definitely spend some time on those. We also, of course, have our online view book. I think that's a really good one to look through. There's lots of up-to-date work on here, and also it gives kind of like a shorter overview of like what our most recent alumni are doing and how many students are getting jobs after they graduate. So it's a really great resource to check out as well, and you can find that on our website. All right. One more thing here before we end and take questions. I would like to invite you all, if you're in the area, to come to the transfer talk and tour. It's on next Tuesday, 10/28, starting at 6 p.m. You can come a little bit later. We're actually gonna have cycles of tours. So if you come at 6:30, that's totally okay. If you come at 7, that's totally okay. You're going to have the opportunity to tour the campus and also, talk with me if you want me to look at your transcripts, if you want me to take a look at your portfolio. But it's specifically for transfer students, so it's going to be really dialed in for transfer students. Most of our events, we hope you come to them if you can't make this one, but they're mostly dedicated, they're mostly for like freshmen coming in. So this is a little bit more transfer friendly, a little bit more transfer focused. So we hope to see you on Tuesday. Go ahead and take a shot of that and you can register for the event. And yeah, we hope to see you there. I'll leave it up here for a second, but we'll take some questions.